Hey everybody, it's me, that guy with the game releases every month. As it is currently or soon to be a brand new month, we are back once again with another brand new video all about what's coming out soon. Here are August 2026's biggest game releases. Before we get into it, the usual caveat, we do our very best to make these videos accurate and up to date, but game release dates have a tendency to change and human beings have a tendency to make mistakes now and then, so for best results, always check your local listings. A great place to start is IGN.com/upcoming, which is regularly updated and full of fascinating information. And now, onto the games. Are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president? No? Well, what about to run against him? Anomaly President is a roguelite action game with a side of base building and a pinch of dancing, where you play as a presidential hopeful who's on the campaign trail by day and who battles his enemies by night. That one's hitting early access on Steam August 3rd. On August 4th, Beast of Reincarnation hits Xbox Series, PS5, and PC, which is the all-new post-apocalyptic action RPG from Game Freak, the studio best known for Pokemon. But this time around, instead of making flora and fauna battle each other for your entertainment, you'll be taking matters into your own hands and battling some flora and fauna yourself. Also that day is Big Walk, which is the latest from House, the studio that gave us Untitled Goose Game. This one is an open-world co-op multiplayer puzzle game that looks somewhere between The Witness, Death Stranding, and any number of those goofy co-op Steam games lovingly referred to as Friend Slop. Given the studio's previous work, I am extremely intrigued. That one's on PS5, Switch 2, and PC. On the 6th, the big one is Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, the latest 2D fighter from Arc System Works. As you'd expect, it looks absolutely gorgeous. When it's not moving so stupidly fast, it's hard to tell what's even happening. This one takes some cues from Capcom's beloved Marvel brawlers, but one thing I appreciate is exactly how many liberties the studio was able to take with character designs here. Look at that! They gave Iron Man a V-fin, like a Gundam. Anyway, that one is only on PS5 and PC. Speaking of mechanized humanoids, that day also sees the release of Echobreaker, an isometric speedrunner where you make an armored rig literally jump through hoops as fast as it can. Meanwhile, if you'd rather make a Timothée Chalamet-looking Pinocchio parry a bunch of steampunk mechs in the best Bloodborne knockoff to date, the Lies of P Complete Edition comes to Nintendo Switch 2. Still that day on everything but the PlayStations is Montabi, or Montabi, or Montabi? I don't know how you say it, but it's a roguelike deck builder and creature collector, and if you ask me, it's about time someone combined the charm of Pokemon with the thrill of card games. There are plenty of tower defense games, but what about tower management? Well, that's what Sovereign Tower is, and you'll be telling a castle full of whimsical weirdos what to do, which I have a hunch may yield some hilarious results. That's on PC for now. Finally that day, Uncanny Tales: The Watcher is a first-person psychological horror game where you work as a park ranger observing the goings-on in the park, but beware, someone else is also observing them as well. So basically Five Nights at Firewatch, I guess? Anyway, that's on PC. On August 11th, The Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered comes to Nintendo Switch 2, and it's always cool to me when such a massive game like this comes to such a teeny tiny device. Obviously, we've gotten Skyrim and The Witcher 3 and two incredible open-world Zelda games on the original Switch, but it's still just neat to me that you can take an entire interactive fantasy microcosm and shrink it down and take it on the go like that.
I just think they're neat.
If you'd prefer some fantasy fare that's considerably less serious than Oblivion, there's also Stonewards on PC, which is a roguelike defense game that looks like a mix of Minecraft, Dungeon Defenders, and Deep Rock Galactic. Can you dig it?
Can you dig it?
On the 12th, also on PC, there's Verde, which, as you might have suspected from the title, being the Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese word for green, involves growing some little tiny plants. In fact, a whole little tiny plant city worth of them. On August 13th, you can run through the jungle with up to 99 other unfortunate sons in Hell Let Loose Vietnam. This features intense 50v50 battles with appropriately asymmetrical gameplay that simulates the radically different tactics and ordnance employed by the factions involved in that particularly hellish conflict. That one's on Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. A day later on those very same platforms, Mafia: The Old Country gets a DLC expansion in Man of Honor, which features 2 new story chapters and some new free ride content for just $10. Considering the deluge of games coming out this fall, dropping a $10 DLC for a game from last year feels a little like entering a rubber dinghy in a jet boat race, but considering that Mafia's got the same parent company as Grand Theft Auto, maybe a rising tide raises all ships after all? Another property that falls under the Take-Two Interactive umbrella is BioShock, and since we haven't had one of those in a while and none are officially on the horizon, you might be interested in Twisted Tower, a spooky stylized FPS set in an abandoned 1950s theme park. That one's just on PC for now. It's also been a second since we got a big, gross, chunky Souls-like, but on August 20th, that changes with Mortal Shell 2. The original Mortal Shell was far from perfect, but it shows some potential and had some killer art direction, and based on the reception to the demo, it sounds like the devs pumped all their XP and money from the first game into the sequel. That one's on Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. Still that day on Switch is Over Requiemz, which is an otome dating game in which you play as a high school girl who gets sucked into a tornado and transported to the land of Oz, where she's sentenced to death for having dark hair and dark eyes, and then proceeds to romance the men that she meets on death row. Sure, let's go with it. A day later on PC is DWARRF, a pinball roguelike, which, as the name suggests, is a roguelike featuring pinball, but also pachinko and turn-based combat, and you play as a dwarf pirate riding around in a minecart that looks like a little pirate ship. If you enjoyed the chemicals your brain shot out while playing games like Vampire Survivors and Balatro and Ball Pit, this seems like it might elicit a similarly generous dopamine response. If you want to beat the heat, you can chill out in Permafrost, a co-op or solo survival game set in a wintry post-apocalypse, which kind of sounds like freeze-dried Subnautica with seasonal depression. Breaking news, too much stuff is coming out August 27th. For starters, there's Star Wars Zero Company, which is basically Star Wars plus XCOM plus Mass Effect 2, which looks fantastic, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Meanwhile, Resonance, A Plague Tale Legacy is a new installment in that narrative stealth adventure series, which looks to be a little more action-focused and which may or may not contain a Minotaur. If you're still riding high on World Cup fever, still that day, there's Captain Tsubasa 2 World Fighters, which features 110 playable characters from the beloved soccer anime, but if that's somehow not enough, there's also a robust character creator for creating robust custom characters as well as waifish sickly ones if you're into that. All of these games are on Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. On those platforms, plus Switch 2 that day as well, is Brigandine Abyss, the third installment in the tactical strategy RPG series that got its start almost 30 years ago on the PS1. Fun fact, Brigandine is a type of armor, and Abyss is another word for a deep pit. So the name of this game is synonymous with plate mail crevasse or ballistic hole, but who cares? It sounds cool. Speaking of cool sounding video game names that are actually pretty stupid if you think about them for more than 10 seconds, Metal Gear Solid is about a guy named Solid who fights things called Metal Gears, which is the same naming convention as Crocodile Dundee.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
I see you've played Knifey Spoony before.
Anyway, if you don't have a problem with people going on long-winded, semi-coherent tangents like I've been known to do in these videos, you'll have no problem at all with Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots, one of 3 games making up the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 2, the other 2 being the HD version of Peace Walker and the gorgeous little Game Boy Color game Ghost Babel. Peace Walker's gotten a few ports and re-releases over the years since it originally came out for the PSP, but this is the first time MGS4 is playable on anything but a PS3, which is pretty cool. If you're trying to play these games chronologically, 4 is the sequel to 2, and Peace Walker is the sequel to 3 and the prequel to 5, and if you think that's convoluted, wait till you hear the plots to these games. That one's on current gen, PC, and Switch 1. And finally, if you've got a Switch 2 and some time to kill, a couple more enormous RPGs that need no introduction are getting shrunken down for that little device. Final Fantasy XIV Online, A Realm Reborn, and Elden Ring Tarnished Edition. Once again, it's wild to me you can take such massive games on the go on such a little tiny machine. I guess you could play it hooked up to the TV too with that dock thing. I'm told some people actually do that, which is totally fine. Just like it's fine to wear a bathing suit in the shower or practice skateboard tricks in the garage, or you keep a can of SpaghettiOs in the cup holder in the car so you can eat them on the road. All of those things are okay. Did you know it's legal in all 50 states to drive barefoot? It's true. I Googled it. I'm just kidding. Playing your Switch docked isn't weird at all. Anyway, folks, there you have it. The biggest... Hey, wait, hold on. Sorry, that's not everything. I recorded this month's episode a little bit early to get ahead of San Diego Comic-Con, but a handful of games got release dates since then that I wanted to shout out really quick. There are a whole lot of games where you run around with an axe and chop stuff up, but Chop Chop Inc. is the only one I can think of where your primary objective is to make furniture, and that one hits PC on the 7th. Also on PC on the 13th is Memoirium, and that is a surreal, dreamlike, low-poly Souls-like that has you doing normal Soulsy stuff, but then you also have to decorate your crappy low-poly dorm room. Looks cool. Also that day on PC, as well as Xbox Series and PS5, is Pro Jank Footy, and based on the trailer, it kind of reminds me of Thank Goodness You're Here, except it's Australian and a football game, so it's not really that much like Thank Goodness You're Here aside from its bizarre sense of humor, but in any case, thank goodness it's here because it looks hilarious. On the 19th, Project PITT hits PC, which is a physics-based game about throwing rubber ducks in a hole for some reason, which sounds like a cross between Portal and that one Tiny Toon Adventures episode where Plucky keeps flushing stuff down the toilet.
Never go down the hole.
On August 25th, Aliens Fireteam Elite 2 comes to Xbox Series, PS5, and PC, which involves more of the co-op bug zapping that the first installment did well, but ups your squad size from 3 to 4 members and introduces a new specialist class that lets you mix and match abilities and perks to become the ultimate badass Space Marine with the most state-of-the-badass art loadout possible. Also on the 25th is Blood Dungeon, which is a roguelike platformer from Messhoff, the people who gave us Nidhogg, one of my favorite games of all time, and it has the same gruesome low-res aesthetic and menacing aura that masterpiece does, and it's on both Switches, Xbox, PS5, and PC. If you want something that colors inside the lines a little bit more than that, Box Knight is also out on the 25th for PC, and that is also an action roguelite that kind of looks like Dungeon Defenders if Dungeon Defenders had to grow up and get an office job and then defend an office instead of a dungeon. And finally, one more game I'm really stoked for is the Immortal John Triptych, another Monty Python-esque point-and-click from the studio behind Procession to Calvary, which is made entirely using cut-up old paintings, specifically the work of my favorite artist, Hieronymus Bosch, who you might know as the 15th century Flemish painter who posthumously designed a bunch of the monsters for Metaphor Fantasio. Either that or Atlas ripped off a bunch of drawings by a dead guy. Either way, the Immortal John Triptych is on Xbox Series, PS5, PC, and both the Switches. Okay, that's it. No more games. That's all we can get to this month. Before I go, the usual thanks to everybody who helps this video come together. Amanda Medina, Chris Del Padre, Logan Plant, and this month's guest editor, Mike Wynn. I love you, Mike. And of course, the usual thank you to everybody who watches and leaves nice comments, but an extra special thanks to the handful of people who flagged me down during Comic-Con and said that they liked this show. That made my year. Anyway, that's all for this month. Please bear with us for next month. It would be an absolute shit show no matter what because of all the games that are coming out in September, but it's gonna be a super turbo shit show tournament edition because we're also in Gamescom for the last 2 weeks of August. So if you're in Germany and you see me, say hi. I'm nice, I promise. I'll see you next time.